Good day. My name is Frank La Rue, and I'm the Assistant Director General of UNESCO for Communication and Information. Let me begin today by explaining why are we organizing this event and why is UNESCO engaged with judges. As you know, UNESCO is the institution of education, natural sciences, social sciences, culture, and communication. And in all those 5 sectors, our purpose is to build peace in the minds of individuals, of human beings, and to promote the better understanding between cultures and peoples of the world. And this is crucial. And in the area of communication and information, we facilitate this mandate of UNESCO by promoting freedom of expression and the free flow of ideas and knowledge between peoples of the world so everyone can get to understand each other. And peoples of one nation can respect and understand the peoples of another nation, their culture, their values, and their traditions, and therefore build consensus around peace. This is fundamentally our mandate. Now, in doing so, we give a special attention to freedom of expression in general and how to exercise the freedom of expression, the right to seek and receive information, to build our thoughts, and to impart and disseminate information. But in that sense, the seek and receive information is crucially linked to the freedom of the press and the media. We believe that only in a free society, where there's a free press with diversity and pluralism, can citizens be engaged in receiving information of different types, from different perspectives. And that information, that access to information from a free media is also linked to the safety of journalists. If the journalists are not safe, they won't be able to play the role, to do their work effectively. So this is why we insist on linking freedom of expression with freedom of the press with safety of journalists. And in that level, UNESCO is the lead agency of all the UN agencies to coordinate the United Nations Plan of Action for Safety of Journalists. The safety of journalists has many areas for us, has the areas of prevention, the area of protection, and the procurement of justice. Why? Why this third area? Because we discovered along the way that the worst enemy of safety is impunity. Every time a case of violence occurs and is not investigated, many more cases will occur. This is why a few years ago, actually 1.5, 2 years ago, our colleagues in Latin America began linking safety of journalists not only to the state institutions related to safety and to the associations of journalists and to human rights organizations, but also to other state institutions like the judiciary or like the prosecutors. Because to have the rule of law and to have an active judiciary understand these issues is crucial for the safety of journalists. And this is why today we're bringing this to Africa. For us, it was very important to begin this sort of courses of bringing the debate, the dialogue, the knowledge on what has the world advanced in questions of freedom of expression, freedom of the press, privacy, the use of ICTs, internet, and particularly the question of eradication of impunity, of how to guarantee justice for the safety of journalists. This is the purpose of this big training course today, which will be converted into a MOOC course online so everyone can participate at a distance and we can all share ideas at a distance as well. Our hope is that once we have done this in Latin America, we're beginning to do it now in Africa, we're planning to do it in Southeast Asia, this is the sequence, but eventually we would like to have the sharing of experiences, the sharing of jurisprudence, of good practices, of the effect of a judiciary involved in these issues. And this would be our next step. So congratulations for being here. We are very eager to share this moment with you and the beginning of this new involvement of the judiciary in questions of safety of journalists, freedom of the press, and freedom of expression in general. United Nations as an institution was built to promote and to keep peace in the world, but a peace based on the respect for human rights. This is why after establishing United Nations in 1945, we had we had UNESCO established in 1946 as the institution of building peace in the minds of individuals. And then in 1948, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. As a matter of fact, we are now beginning the year of the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is very important. And the idea of human rights was to make it very clear that although different states and different regions of the world may have different cultures, different views, different perspectives, different values, that there had to be some common thread, that ultimately we're all human beings, regardless of our race, our economic origin, our nationality, our religion, our language, or our culture. That we're all human beings at the basic level. And that as human beings, we had to enjoy the same common rights, because otherwise we would be discriminating one against another. So the idea of human rights was to create a network of basic fundamental standards from which no one should fall below. I always remind people that human rights is not the maximum. Human rights is the minimum that we expect from any state and from any region and from any person to respect for others. So it was this minimum, this sort of network of protection that we wanted to create. And in this network, we established many individual rights to clarify them. But each of these rights, and we always say this in the theory, are interconnected and interrelated. The structure of human rights has to be understood precisely as a net. You cannot understand one right without the exercise of others. And the state cannot say, we'll respect some rights, but we'll deny others. No. Human rights as a whole are the basis of protection of human beings. So you have to accept all of them. And in those rights, some rights are facilitators of other rights. And these rights that facilitate other rights are those that serve as instruments. And this is the case of freedom of expression. Why? Because freedom of expression is the possibility of speaking out for the other rights, for freedom of expression itself, but also to speak out about individual rights, individual liberties, or about the right to water or people's rights. Now, human rights can be exercised as an individual, as a person, can be exercised collectively as a society, as a group. We can associate and exercise a right, or we can have the peoples organizing themselves around specific issues, but they can also be enjoyed as peoples. And this is very important in Africa, for instance. When the Human Rights Commission was created, it was called the Commission on Human Rights and People's Rights of Africa. And this was, I think, an important development, an important contribution of Africa, because all the peoples of all nations have their own identity, their own language, their own culture, their own tradition, issues that identify them as people of a nation and therefore should be respected as people. So beginning with sovereignty and autonomy. So this is something that we would like to emphasize, the three levels of exercising rights: individual, collective, and people's rights. All the rights are basically the same and all interrelated, but it's just a different form of exercising them. And in those rights, freedom of expression is very particular because it has a tremendous input into individual development, into society because it's the basis of democracy, and into people's rights because it's the basis of presenting yourself publicly with your identity, of being a people. Individually, it is the right to seek and receive information and to impart and disseminate information and opinion and ideas. But in the middle, there's another right, which is the right to freedom of thought and opinion. So in reality, this is a triangle. You receive information, you build freely your thought and opinion, and then you express it. And it says in the declaration, through any means that you choose. This idea that you express yourself through any means that freedom of expression is not only related to the word, to the spoken word or to the written word. It is also related to art. It is also related to any form of expression. But it's also related to the new technologies. It's related from writing with a pen to printing in the press, to developing television and radio, and now to the use of internet communication technologies, ICTs, and the new digital world before us. So any form of expression falls under freedom of expression. And in the middle, our freedom of thinking. This is why we have also said that this is a right that has to be exercised since the early ages. Our first questions that we ask, why things happening? This is important because this is beginning of capturing information to build our thoughts and our opinions. Now, this is on an individual level, is related to our personal development, our mind, our personality, our thoughts, what we will be developing as our ethical line of values. But it also is related to the exercise of democracy, and this is very important on the collective level. Because democracy in any society is precisely the act of governing by the people. And this governance by the people and for the people is very important because it means that people are conscious, that receive information with diversity and plurality, and that they can actually compare sources. They have a free press that they can analyze and contrast. And they can then decide what they believe or what they don't believe, or what they interpret or how they interpret it. So this freedom of information, scientific research, access to education in any form, or dialogue or debate, is essential to building an active citizenship. And I always say that democracy depends on several elements. Constitution and the legal framework of democracy that has to be very dynamic and clear. A strong institutionality for democracy, which is fundamental, but also, and I think the most important element, is an active and conscious society. Citizens are what make democracy, active citizens. And this activity of citizens is based on the information, on the fact that they are well informed, they have opinions, and they express them. And they can condition public policies. They can be elected as public leaders, but they can also challenge their public leaders. They can speak truth to power, as we always say, and can actually challenge public policies to correct them and change course. These are fundamental issues in society. And finally, the people's rights is freedom of expression is essential because we all have a language, we have traditions, we have values that we express collectively. And it is this collective expression of these values, traditions, this culture, what gives us our identity. Now, what has now been developed as the latest position of United Nations in the new agenda, the 2030 agenda, the agenda of sustainable development goals, is that there's an added element of communication and freedom of expression, which is the element of development. Goal 16 says that in order to reach development, there are 5 conditions. You need societies in peace, that are inclusive, no discrimination, that have access to justice and eliminate impunity, that have transparency and openness of what authorities do, and that guarantee, it says, public access to information. Now, this is important because what it's saying is that the guarantee of public access to information is now an element of development. You cannot think of economic and social development without that access to information. So it is a human right, it is a fundamental element of democracy, but it is essential for development. This is the basis today of freedom of expression. And it is of Goal 16 that we're now insisting. This was already declared from before as a right. But with Goal 16 now, we have the global perspective of how to link that freedom of expression and that access to information for all citizens, to link it to societies that are in peace, that have no discrimination, that guarantee justice, and that guarantee inclusiveness to everyone.